Good evening and welcome to the Scientology Money Project on YouTube. We're part of the extended SPTV network. And a broad welcome to everyone out there, and good to have you. Hello, guests. Let's see what's going on. Looks like there's some good chat. Good to see. Let me get down that background music. I like that music. So welcome everyone. We have. Sean Arawa. Is the St. Petersburg Museum open to the public? Is it? I don't know. Pop quiz. In the picture, what direction are we looking? Oh, in this picture? Okay, now this one, just for those of you who are not from the LA area, this is Pac Base. This is during this is a shoot I did of a Mark Cab invasion on my comedy blog, What Heat is Great. And hi, Sherry. Glad to have you here. And yes, greetings to the congregation, Bishop Carmona. And he's a bishop, if you didn't know that, in our fellowship. So this is a Mark Cab mass invasion. L. Ron Hubbard used to talk about the Mark Cab mass invasion. So I envisioned one. I think it's a pretty good shoot. And then for today's show, I put in Fleet Admiral David Miscavige, who's actually Xenu. That's his real identity. He came to Earth like Superman, but in a DC-8 space plane. Yep. And anyway, this is taken from across the street at Kaiser Permanente Hospital, or they have a drone, one of the two. I don't think the hospital would let them in because you don't want body thetans in. So this picture would be looking south down LRH Way, but I think it's a cool shoot, and it kind of fits the theme of tonight's show. So okay, we'll come back to the Fleet Admirals. We need them. You're dismissed, Mr. Miscavige. You're dismissed. Go away. Blow like a BT. See, he goes away. You can make him just leave. And I know exactly. I'm not sure how to read your name, but yes, the Mark Cabs infiltrated David Miscavige in 1960, and that's going to be part of our story. 1960. So what I wanted to talk about, Aaron Smith-Levin produced a document that Mike Render had taken when he left the church, and there's a thread woven throughout all of Scientology since way back to the it's infiltrated with likes of CIA. I respectfully disagree. The CIA would, that's opinion. I mean, I don't know what the CIA would do with an expensive, overpriced cult. But anyway, no one is talking about the MK Ultra. You know what, Nerman? You have to prove it. And like I've said, this is like, since we have flying saucers, when we'll go. FOIA, Freedom of Information Act here in the U.S. began, I think, 1968. So we have had, what's that? Just call it 1970. We have 56 years of getting 56 years, Nerman, of getting one document from FOIA or a leak or a source. Just one document linking the CIA to Scientology, that they're working, or that L. Ron Hubbard was an agent. Just show me one document in 56 years, or one person who would have knowledge of it. So what happened, and we're getting ahead of things, but we have some people like Nerman and who's on the edge of being blocked because I don't like this stuff. So Nerman, mind your manners. Get your ethics in. That's funny to say as an SP. Get your ethics in. Only Scientologists do that. It's like, who goes around saying, get your ethics in? I've never had anyone say that to me in real life. Get your ethics in. Okay, so this came because I put flying saucers in, and the Mark Cabs L. Ron Hubbard never once in any of his writings tied the Marcabs to the CIA. It's missing from the corpus of L. Ron Hubbard, who died in 1986. So you'd think in all those years, L. Ron Hubbard, he attacked the CIA because the CIA was spreading rumors in the Mediterranean that the Apollo was a spy ship. So Hubbard ran out of places to dock. And then when the arrest warrant was issued, the Interpol red sheet arrest warrant was issued for him for fraud. He fled back to America. In Scientology, every memo is a Dan Sherman speech. Correct. Hi, Holly. White linen or dinner jacket? It's a white linen dinner jacket. I try to look dapper. Green silk shirt. I have to go out later. I got my 613-909 forms. Good for you, Holly. Good for you. Norman, that was rude to tell you, like, ask you for evidence and just like, the show's not, Norman, let me help you out here, if I may. Norman, you should start your own YouTube channel. Really, you because I see you on Facebook groups, and I'm not opposed to you having the conversation that Scientology was CIA, or that L. Ron Hubbard was a CIA agent. He was recruited by Major Ian McBean in 1932, or no, prior to that, 1928, when his family was going through, no, actually earlier than that, when he was going through the Panama Canal. So Norman, you should start your own channel where and build your own audience, because people would talk about it. And so you may think I'm rude, but I think that if this subject is of interest to you, do a YouTube channel. It doesn't cost anything, and then build up your platform, because you probably will have people who, I'm sure I can think of at least 5 people who would jump into that. And anyway, so what I want to talk about was Aaron. Mike Rinder posted a doc, and I want to share it because this is something that goes back a long time into Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard wanted to make Scientology indispensable. That was his goal. Scientology had to become indispensable to L. Ron Hubbard. And David Miscavige is also working toward the same goal. Hubbard versus the CIA is Dullard versus Dulles. That's funny. That's a Cold War thing. So, so L. Ron Hubbard wanted to make Scientology indispensable. Now, when I think of indispensability, I think of Google, the search engine. Like, that's, I think in the internet world, it would be safe to say Google is indispensable, because a lot of people use it every day, all the time. There's other search engines, but Google is indispensable. I would have to switch to a lesser search engine, and user habits are hard to break. I've been using Google forever. So something like Google is indispensable. Something like antibiotics are indispensable. Psychiatric medication is indispensable. Cars are indispensable. So you go down the list, like, of airplanes are indispensable. Hi, Sweet Liberty. Welcome to the show. So, put some things in the comments of things that are indispensable, and then we'll compare them and ask, is Scientology indispensable, or is it delusional in thinking that it can become indispensable? But this concept of indispensability, when Aaron shared this Mike Rinder, these are the documents that Mike Rinder gave the FBI when he left in 2007. This is what struck me. I've been wanting to do a show on it for a long time, because I'm going to trace it back. And yes, exactly, Denise, water is indispensable. You cannot live with water, but you can live without Scientology for your entire life. Look at what Denise is saying. How long can you live without water? Not very long. How long can you live without Scientology? For your entire lifetime. There are billions of people throughout Earth who've never even heard of Scientology. And food, exactly. You need food to live. Do you need Scientology? Is it indispensable? No. Hi, Possibly Trouble. Good to see you here. Toilet paper. Yes, that's indispensable. They used to use phone books, and other things, but basically, water is life. How true. So, oh no, Wayne's World exclaims, don't tell me mismanaged that. Air. See, this is why the interaction with the audience is sanitation. Exactly. Clean water, clean drinkable water, sanitation. You need toilets, sewers, you need food, transportation system. You need when you start looking at the things that are indispensable that you need to sustain and support life, even at a subsistence level, food, water, air, medicine, you go down those things. But L. Ron Hubbard thought he could make Scientology indispensable. So I just wanted to do some word clearing, as they call it in Scientology, to because what we're going to read, you're going to see the word indispensable a lot. Like Scientology sits around and Hubbard used to think of all these idiotic ideas. Form 13909. Between lives area implanting stations are indispensable to our Markab agenda. I'm worried the SILES will destroy them with whole track tech. This is really funny because, of course, as has been widely discussed, Scientologists believe that when L. Ron Hubbard taught that when you die, your Thetan goes to the in between lives implanting stations, either on the backside of the moon or Mars. Your memory's wiped clean, and then you're sent back to Earth to get a baby body. LA and Toronto. Good evening to you, LA. I would never need Scientology. No, you would never need it. If you were drowning, let's say you were the Freewinds, their boat, I don't know, their ship's like, it's a really old ship. It's over 50 years old. If the ship started sinking, you would need a life preserver or a lifeboat. Scientology couldn't save you from drowning, but a life jacket or a lifeboat could. So, sanitation, a method of clearing Scientology from the planet. Suki, this is the best part of Scientology. I'm a nerd for Markab lore, the Heliotrobus implant. There's all this space opera that's fun to read, but you got to realize these guys are serious. They take it deadly seriously. So let's share a screen, and I want to get to the indispensability of Scientology. So this is one of the documents Aaron shared, and it's discussing an OSA long-term unhandled danger condition. So that's Office of Special Affairs, long-term unhandled danger condition. And what I did, if you look at the upper left-hand corner, I put the word indispensability as a Control F, and it says non-compliance to these points, which are essential elements to indispensability and acceptances. So what Ron was trying to achieve through the Guardian's office, as the Guardian's office, and later the OSA is the Guardian's office, they wanted Scientology to be considered indispensable and to be widely accepted. But if we go through the document, the ideal scene for Scientology is that OSA International is in ethics, on purpose, and on hat. That means doing its job. It's correctly positioned as an integral part of the team, not a flap crossroads sucking COB's attention. Let's parse this sentence. So OSA International, the ideal scene that OSA is supposed to have, and that's a Scientology term. You heard Tom Cruise use it on the Matt Lauer show. Matt, what's the ideal scene? And for Tom, it was no one using psych drugs. Because, of course, Tom's a doctor. Okay, so OSA is on purpose and on hat. That means doing its job, because a hat in Scientology is your job. Wear your hat means do your job. It's correctly positioned as an integral part of the overall team. Look at not a flap crossroads. This is why you have to interpret for government officials and other lawyers. A flap is basically a shit storm in Scientology. So OSA, when Mike wrote this, or one of his colleagues or staff, OSA was considered a flap crossroads. It's like at the intersection of fuck up in Maine, a flap crossroads. And what this flap crossroads at the corner of fuck up in Maine does is it sucks COB's attention through its drop balls and worsen situations, but executing coordinated strategy. So instead of like making COB pay attention, OSA ideally is supposed to not drop balls or worsen situation, but it's executing coordinated strategy and creating the outreach and external safe points and global impact that brings about a changed civilization and establishes the, what's the word? Indispensability of Scientology. So when you cut through all the cult stuff, it's supposed to say, hey, we're supposed to have our shit together, not distract COB, who's a global ecclesiastical leader. And then we're supposed to make Scientology indispensable. But you just go through this document, see, indispensability, establishing the indispensability of Scientology, establishing the indispensability of Scientology. That was in a guardian's office order. So the correct target was to make it indispensable. Indispensable again and again. And I think you get the point. I'm going to post this on my blog. And this one says, subsequent OSA issues stated the OSA VFP, which is valuable final project. Valuable final product, as acceptances, and the purpose as establishing indispensability and bringing governments into compliance with Scientology. Okay, now Scientology, one of its goals is to bring governments into compliance with Scientology. And so if you want to know why it's hard to get their tax exemption taken down, or hard to get past their legal protection, is they focus on bringing governments into compliance. That is lawyers, lawsuits, lobbyists, private investigators, fair game, anything they can to get governments to comply. That means governments include the courts and they include legislation. So they can bring about governments into compliance only by using their First Amendment religious protections. That's what has to be breached. That's what has to be taken down. As far as indispensability, no, it's not there. And but look at the rest of this sentence. But so instead of doing this OSA because it's incompetent, it says the pattern of operation never really changed from flap handling that had been dinged in over the years by seniors as the necessary action to revert the scene from the prior deluge of flaps in situations that had not been corralled. Look at that dense cult language. Like you have to set and work on that had been dinged in. That means it's been patterned in by seniors as necessary action to revert the scene from prior. I don't want to get it. You can just see this is very much another thing that they want. The various reorganizations of OSA International over the past 20 years. Now, whenever you have an organization that needs to be reorganized, and I think in this document there's 6 or 9 reorganizations. When you reorganize a unit, it means it's screwed up. It's really screwed up. So now, these reorganizations miss the thing. ABLE, which is in charge of all the social betterment groups, we're going to cover ABLE. So you can see that this. So here's what Scientology was looking at as part of its social engineering programs: aged reform. I guess that's helping the elderly. Mental retarded reform. So look at the language there. Scientology says it cannot. L. Ron Hubbard specifically says he cannot treat the mentally ill. Scientology cannot treat the mentally ill, and yet, as part of their indispensability, they wanted to mental retarded form. That language is embarrassing. It's out of date. It's really horrible use of language. Committee of Public Health and Safety. This sounds like Eastern. I mean, this just sounds like Russian propaganda. Social reform communities, economic reform. So, see, you can see Scientology wants to meddle in all sectors of society to become indispensable. And again, that's why Tom Cruise says that Scientologists are the only ones that can help. that they're the experts. They're the experts on the mind, getting people off drugs, literacy, etc. And they were talking about these LRH programs, and they even had a territory evaluation, book text synopsis, and plan for world peace. So, but however, what happened? So you can see that Scientologists delusionally sat around. Well, they want world peace. They want literacy. They want to help mental illness, even though Hubbard said they can't help with it. But they keep pounding away on this document on the word indispensability. I counted it. I mean, it occurs a number of times. It repeats. It's an obsession to have Scientology be indispensable. So that's something on your blogs and your social media, your YouTubes. I think it's something that should be promoted as a Scientology. What the public doesn't see is that Scientology's goal is controlling the world. They do have an agenda to put in. The purpose of the Sea Org is to put in L. Ron Hubbard ethics on the planet, and and they also want to make Scientology indispensable. And just this document alone, this idea, this bright idea here, is to OSA had been screwing up so badly by not controlling all the exposés of the cult. And so you see these programs like realign OSA Int to its purpose of establishing the indispensability of Scientology. But actually, Sea Org is to put in Scientology's ethics on the planet. That's what it's pledged when you join when you join the Sea Org. You commit yourself for the next billion years to put in Scientology ethics on the planet. And then OSA, who's all Sea Org, part of OSA Int is to establish the indispensability of Scientology. And they're supposed to slam dunk social reform, through these front groups. And I'm going to show you so you can kind of get the idea. And I can just keep going through the document ad nauseum, and there's plenty of documents. And I think this shows you the preoccupation. This document alone, how are we going to do this? So this recurs, and whenever you see something recur, you see an obsession in the organization. So David Miscavige, L. Ron Hubbard, all of Scientology they want to be indispensable. They want to be the ones who you call when there's a problem. Again, that's why Tom Cruise said we're the experts on everything, literally. So this theme of indispensability recurs, but the public never sees it. And I'm going to show you what Scientology social betterment groups. So L. Ron Hubbard's plan was to infiltrate all sectors of society. And that included using fair game, intelligence, spying, all kinds of things. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm just going to show you the Scientology architecture for social betterment. And I lost myself. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. And I'm just going to show you what they call their social betterment groups. And this is from the Scientology Money Project. And I'll post a link in the show notes. Okay, so let's make this large and in charge. Hubbard used a code phrase, and Scientology still use it, called social betterment. The idea that we need to socially better Scientology, or I'm sorry, we need to socially better the world. And this goes to indispensability. So you can see these groups. These are their social betterment groups that are supposed to make Scientology indispensable. So beginning from left to right, and I don't know if you can see it, it's how we help. That's their broadcasting network. But the way to happiness is part of how they're going to make the cult indispensable. Applied scholastics, that's supposed to be their answer to literacy. Criminon, which Scientology is beginning to get more of its own members into Criminon. Narconon is drug treatment. Of course, they were sued almost into non-existence, and they have problems, and they've skirted state laws by dropping the big centers, going to smaller beds. Their anti-drug programs are largely pamphlets they push to give to lazy cops who have to check a box off that they've been doing anti-drug education in their community. But that's the way they infiltrate police departments. Human rights, which is complete and total bullshit. When you strip a person of all their legal and civil rights in those contracts you sign, force them into binding arbitration, you enslave children, you robbed them of their childhood. There are no human rights in Scientology. That's the biggest lie. Uh, but Hubbard thought he could, he could use this as a cover that they're interested in human rights. They're not. They they're not interested. When you pay someone to work and as a Sea Org member and they get $50 a week or less and they're not free to move, they can't think, they're checked, they're interrogated, they're labor trafficked, or even child trafficking in some cases. There's no human rights. And then of course CCHR, the purpose of which is to destroy psychiatry. So when Scientology says it wants to be indispensable, one of its key goals you have to realize is Hubbard and David Miscavige and the church even now say we have to destroy psychiatry. So because Scientology wants to have a monopoly on mental health care treatment in the world. That was Hubbard's goal. That is Scientology's goal. Yeah. I'm glad you jumped in here. Those front groups are what we're trying to hit hard in Toronto. The public has no idea. Truth About Drugs is in our school board. That's terrible. And may I suggest, if you collect the pamphlets, LA and Toronto, if you collect all the pamphlets, and you can get them, you can actually order them from Scientology. All you have to do is go and collect the pamphlets, and you show that they come from Scientology. And I'll do an educational live stream on how to show a school board or a police department the real purpose of these pamphlets is infiltration, influence. And I do have plenty of pictures of cops holding these pamphlets up. In fact, generally, police departments are busy, and yet when they get charged with and I should have Poe on. I wish he were here. But when police departments get charged with drug education in the community, and Scientology can come in and give them small throwaway pamphlets, they're kind of like Jack Chick, the Christian pamphleteer. He sold hundreds of millions of tracts, by the way. Um, so if you can show them that the idea of these pamphlets is to is to give you free pamphlets in exchange for PR, because you'll see and I have it on my blog, Scientology and Cops, you'll see all these happy cops holding the booklets. So the small police agencies and even large ones get free booklets. They call that drug education. They check the box, as I said. So this is Scientology trying to become indispensable, or at least useful. And yeah, no kidding. There's some interesting work going on out there. And so if you understand the social betterment groups, you'll see that this is an educational article, and this is what the church says, the Association for Better Living and Education. And these are the sectors. And really, if you can educate people, these are all the sectors, Scientology. This is a Scientology diagram. It's not mine. This is how Scientology breaks the world down. So it's going to have this outreach. I have the star there, the Association for Better Living and Education, ABLE. That's sort of the master group of all the social media, social betterment groups. But this is how Scientology, in What is Scientology, a book it put out. These are the 10 core sectors of Church of Scientology International. ABLE fits in, and it tries to reach into society to make itself indispensable. And that's what hands out human rights booklets, and it does a lot of the front groups work, even though there are no human rights, as I said. So this is really what it is. It's a PR arm. And you can go through that. I'm not going to read it all, but it's PR, recruitment, photo ops, to say, hey, how bad can we be when we're in Colombia handing out anti-drug pamphlets, which get thrown in the trash. You can, and I'm not recommending it, but if one were to fill this form out, Foundation for a Drug-Free World, they can get a free kit. But what you're reading, you have to agree in order to get your free kit. If you're an educator, let's say in some small town, if you read small print, if you're an educator wanting to get free books on drugs because your school district's poor and you've been assigned to do drug education, it says by checking this box, and this is important, and I'll try to enlarge it, but this is part of their indispensability, but it's a scam. So it says by checking this box, and this is in the green shaded area, you are confirming that you are an educator and you intend to use these truth about drugs introductory materials to advance the instruction of 11-year-olds and above. So Scientology is targeting 11-year-olds and above with Scientology materials. So you have to agree contractually that you're going to use these. You agree as well to provide us, that's Scientology, with feedback and results of your activity. So you have to, it says this could include educator testimonials, student response, and video or photographic documentation where possible. So it says, we understand that due to privacy issues, participants' identity and our image may not be able to be provided. But Scientology is saying, we'll give you this, but we want PR in exchange. That includes video, photographs, educator testimonials. So this is the hook. It's always a carrot and a hook. And then also the truth about drugs is I note down there, and that's important. One thing that's important to note is that the foundation for a drug-free world is a crypto narconon recruiting vehicle. So anytime Scientology has a social betterment group, you have to realize it has a hook, it has an angle, it has a con. So if you get their anti-drug stuff, they're going to try to drive business to Narconon. You can see Narconon in the middle up here. And if you use applied scholastics and they're trying to drive you into Scientology, the way to happiness is to try to drive you into introductory Scientology courses. So all of these so-called social betterment vehicles aim to make Scientology indispensable. These are ultimately recruiting vehicles and ways for Scientology to make money and or get into police departments where it can safe point itself. So the indispensability goes with really safe pointing and recruiting new members, raising money. And so it's all laid out. And if you study it, we have Youth for Human Rights. So these are just front groups that try to attach themselves to the UN and other places. They do push for Youth for Human Rights, and they produce DVDs. And again, if you were, and because these are come in all languages, literally, Scientology's printing factory here in LA can produce in most languages of the world. You could order 500 of these for Guatemala, but look at how much they are. If you wanted a DVD, I put in here, I filled out the form, I wanted 200. They went $3,000. So they usually will try to get Scientologists to pay for it. So if you got in trouble, let's say you did something wrong and you were lower condition, they might ask you to buy 2,000 copies of the book. So you can look at how much they're charging for these things. It's $1.50 for a CD or a book. So it's a profit center as well. I'm sorry, the DVDs are $15 and the booklets are $1.50. So you can see that everything has a hook. You know, some Scientologists will pay for these overpriced merchandise. You agree to get PR. It's horrible. Yeah, this is something you should take and show up in Toronto. Yeah, go to the website. Just take your laptop in, plug into the projector, show them the money. Yeah, that's the prices they charge. Alternately, if you get them for free, then they will ask you for PR in return. They will expect PR. That's why you can put Scientology police officers into Google search engine, and you'll find plenty of cops holding pamphlets. And that was the deal, and that's the exchange. And that makes Scientology look legitimate. So this is why I tell you you have to do what I call dumpster diving, and that's going to Scientology websites and you dig down. You just go through page after page, fill out forms, and see what the real details are. And that's what you do as an investigator. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, they charge, someone's paying, because in Scientology, nothing is free. So what you want to do, LA and Toronto, Toronto Scientology audit, what you want to do is ask the school district, are you paying or are these being donated? If they're being donated, then I have a right as a public, especially if you have children in school, or just as a taxpayer, I have a right to know, what are you giving Scientology in return for this? Are you allowing them to use our children in the name of our school and their publicity? So if you can already find publicity that's been issued by the school district, take it to the media, publicize it. Look for who liaises in this school district with the Church of Scientology. Identify that person, public as the liaison. So if they have one of the educational officials liaising, you want to look into that person. Why are you dealing with the Church of Scientology? Are you connected to the church? Are they paying you? And you raise those questions, they're legitimate. Do you know that this is even Scientology? You don't assume anything. You just say, do you know you're dealing with the Church of Scientology and not Youth for Human Rights or the Foundation for a Drug-Free World? Do you even know you're dealing with them? A lot of times they may not. So, yeah, yeah, yes. So, thank you, Patrick. So, anyway, this is yet more evidence. I went to the Way to Happiness, and I'm going to show this on screen. I went to the Way to Happiness site to see what it would cost to buy booklets, and you can see that if I were to buy book bundles of 12 each, if I were to buy 1,000 bundles, I would spend 11,700. So as part of Scientology's indispensability, it's actually wanting to sell a lot of merchandise. If I wanted to buy 200 copies of The Way to Happiness, it would be $4,000. So that bill would be $15,700. That's something to think about. That is something to think about. So this is the evidence you develop. Oh, I will watch you. And please share, reach out to me if you want to do a video about it. Be glad to help you. You can email me, be glad to help you with references, but I will post this in this particular column in the show notes. So, and then you can continue shopping as well. But see, this is the kind of evidence that given to the local media or the school board. And like I said, you do it in a respectful manner. Like, we can't have this. Applied Scholastics, look at the price lists on this. I went shopping to see about the indispensability of Scientology and what they're really up to with social betterment. Look at this. How to use a dictionary picture book. At the top line, if I wanted 100 of those, it's $10,000. Grammar and communication, $21.95. So I ordered 100 of everything. The basic study manual, communicating is fun. Yeah, especially if you're making, $4,000 for 100 books. Student dictionary, glossary, the new grammar. So when they say they want to do literacy, I went there and I bought 100 each. I didn't buy them. I just filled it in. So this is Applied Scholastics. Just by getting 100 copies of each book, I spent $42,285. So these rat bastards are making money. Oh, hi, Travolcado. Love your voice. Well, thank you. You hear the sound only of my voice. No, I've got, I try to, it's sort of like, one of those things you try to give the viewer a really good experience of education, voice, keep a good tone. And you know what? Everyone has a different style. That's the nice thing I like about SPTV. Like Natalie, I think she's got a terrific voice. Aaron, high energy. So that's the great thing about it. But thank you. Your voice is like rich, masculine corduroy. Let's not veer off. Thank you, Travolcado. Let's not get off into rich, masculine corduroy. That's kind of a E. Stuart Mills thing. But so anyway, but you can see the deception when they talk about indispensability in the OSA articles that are non-public. Then you see the social betterment groups, which are supposed to be friendly, but actually are looking for a lot of money. They're looking for every penny they can claw out. So, because this stuff isn't free, you either give publicity or money or both. And they have the now defunct World Literacy Crusade, of course, which was rated among other things. Now, we next enter Crazy Town, also known as the Viciously Anti-Psychiatry Citizens Commission on Human Rights. Now, they attack psychiatry. They show up at conventions. Let's look at the price tags here of what Scientology is really charging to become indispensable. And so the Making a Killing, this is a DVD about how the psychiatric pharmaceutical industry is making a killing. Yeah, Scientology is $500,000 to have the clear cognition that you're mocking up your own reactive mind. Yeah, who's making a killing there? David Miscavige. So if I bought 1,200 copies, I'd spend 18,000. Psychiatry, the compendium, and I'm sure that's put together by PhD level people who graduated from the Hubbard College of Administration. If I ordered 1,200 copies, 66,000. And I'm putting in numbers like the most crazy video is Psychiatrists, the Men Behind Hitler. This video, I've actually watched it. If you can get a copy on eBay, it's worth buying one if it's a few bucks to watch how fucking crazy these guys are. So I ordered 1,200 copies. I was just putting in high numbers here so I could get to 113,000. And this was to make a point that the cult is soaking you. The cult of Scientology is soaking you. They sell this stuff. Somebody pays for it, right? But this video, they try to argue that the psychiatrists were the men behind Hitler. And anytime there's a mass shooting or anything, they automatically blame psychiatry. And so Criminon, which actually was started by an actual convicted felon who got out of jail and hooked up with Hubbard. Rehabilitation is possible. So look at this shopping cart here. This is something that I really would like people to promote who are well positioned. People in your local community, where Criminon may be. People who may be positioned. Look at that. This course is called Understanding and Overcoming Addiction course. This comes from a cult that believes that invisible, telepathic, dead space aliens are clustering to your body, and they're the ones causing addiction. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay, so this is $85. I ordered 100 copies for my jail, pretending I'm a cop with a jail, $8,500. Scientology, if you're so much into human rights, why don't you give this stuff away? That's one question you could raise. If Scientology, if you're so into human rights, why don't you give this stuff away? You are a multi-billion-dollar church, you claim. I mean, they are a multi-billion-dollar, they're a cult, really, but why don't you give this stuff away? It's so cheap to produce. And then they're making these stats. This is something you should show too. You can go on and show, they're claiming Narcanon has a 76% success rate. And these are why you dumpster dive to prove their lies. They said that there was a 50% drop in the crime rate in Colombia from handing out copies of The Way to Happiness. They claim that 135,000 educators have been trained by applied scholastics. That's an outright lie. Prove it. Prove it. They can't. See, this is the stuff. If you take this to your school board, Toronto Scientology audit, take this to them where they say more than 135,000 educators. That's absurd. That's just absurd. It's an outright lie, but they publish it. And it says after study technology, which you pay for, like I showed, the percent of students with improved scores increased 23 times the national average. That is just palpable bullshit. I mean, Scientology audit, Toronto, you've got to show this. You can't improve scores 23 times the national average. But how do you even put that into an equation? Is everyone in the world F? Or how do you get to 23 times the national average of what? these aren't even real statistics. They're like on Ron Burgundy. I mean, with the cologne, where 67% of the time it works 70% of the time. These are just stupid statistics. Like, what does it mean that you improve scores 23 times the national average? If you have A, B, C, D, F in the US, how could you get a 23? What's a 23% improvement? I don't know. And now look at this last statistic over to the right. 87% of teens involved in gangs and drug abuse gave up their life after completion of the program. 87%? Does that mean like you had 3 students, or how many were involved? So as part of their social betterment, when you go to their sites, yeah, 23 times it. Yeah, Grant Cardone should get that. So that's part of what you do when to rebut their lies, is to show these absurd statistics, and then have whoever's working with Scientology say, can you give me absolute evidence before I use this in my school district that 87% of teens involved in gangs and drugs gave up their lifestyle after completion of what program? And how much did the program cost? And who are these teens? What city, what state, where? So as part of indispensability, there's outright lies in the statistics, because Scientology lies about everything, and it costs a lot of money. And that's just one part. So social betterment is just one part of what Scientology is trying to do to become indispensable. Now, I want to show you another document that's really interesting. Okay, this is a slide that I have had in my files, and this is actually an OSA program that you need to see. Okay, now, so this is an OSA program. This is really what one of OSA's goals, among destroying people, fair game, hiring thugs, PIs, hoodlums, etc., lying. It says OSA International must form up, get on purpose, and accomplish its valuable final product of establishing the indispensability of Scientology. This I'll put in my show notes as well. And you can see that the social betterment groups, on the one hand, are a profit-making enterprise that seek to recruit people into a very expensive cult. They lie about their statistics blatantly. It's not just little lies, they're huge lies. 23 times the national average. Anyway, so this is a program. This is a document I had found for some time ago, and it may be in with Mike's documents. I don't remember where I got it. It was found on internet. FOI, found on internet. So this is a restatement of what this is. Read, if you know how to read between the lines. What this document says is that OSA is hopelessly fucked up and can't get its job done because Scientology is being attacked. What it really means is that out in the real world, OSA can't stop all the expose. They can't stop the internet. They can't stop the exposure of the child trafficking, of ruining children, of ruining adults, of ruining bank accounts, retirements, old people. They can't stop it, this labor trafficking. And now they're supposed to build a competent OSA network with qualified staff. Good luck with the talent pool. To create a safe environment for Scientology to expand into. If you know how to read that, number 3, to create a safe environment means you have to destroy the suppressives. That implies fair game, an aggressive campaign of fair game, harassment, intimidation, so that anyone speaks out will get destroyed. And that's important to realize, knowing how to read these things. L. Ron Hubbard wrote, quote, "We are not the police, but we are teaching the unholy a lesson. If you leave us alone, we will leave you alone," unquote. So what Hubbard was saying when he said, "We are not the police, but we are teaching an unholy lesson. If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone." He said, if you shut the fuck up about what we're doing, we'll leave you alone. If you don't, we will destroy you. And I always said to Hubbard, fuck you, and say to Osa, fuck you. I'm not taking your deal. You know, give it your best shot, and but go fuck yourself. That's really my attitude towards Scientology or a cult. And I'm supposed to give up my free speech. So, no, I'll take it. Uh, hello, dirty Uncle Hubert. You need to really mend your ways. People talk about you, and it's not flattering. Dirty Uncle Hubert. Um, so anyway, it's like, yeah, that's what that really means. So knowing to create a safe environment, the only safe environment is one where no one talks about Scientology because it's been fair gamed. And there's also, as I write on my blog, there is a genocide, a call for genocide. Hubbard thinks that everyone below 2.0 are on the tone scale. In his 1952 book, Science of Survival, he called for everyone 2.0 on the tone scale to either be processed above that or to be disposed of quietly and without sorrow. And I've talked about that genocide before, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. So these are the targets. And this is Scientology word salad, you know, compliance, WDCOSA, and you have to sign off, get their agreement to get it done. So this is just like, how can we unfuck OSA? Well, you can't. But it's disturbing to read this master race document because Scientology is a master race. They believe they're homo novus. Again, that point needs to be hammered home to people. They're a master race group. They think they're homo novus, and they're not homo sapiens or homo saps. So this is the evidence we need, and publicize it. And this is a treasure trove of what Mike Rinder leaks, treasure trove of documents. The FBI has it. A lot of what they have, violates public policy clearly, especially their calls to destroy the BPA's is battle plans. You have to have a battle plan every week. So I'm just scrolling through it. Okay, so look at what they wanted to complete the following. So they wanted to terminate the Reed Slacken litigation. That is interesting because Reed Slacken had perpetrated then one of the largest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history of about 600 million, and they were being sued. People were suing Scientology. Scientology was in the news because Reed Slacken was a Scientologist. Now, of course, I've been covering the 1.7 billion dollar GPB Capital Ponzi scheme run by Scientologist David Gentili of Manhasset, Long Island. And he and his co-defendant, Jeffrey Schneider of Austin, Texas, are going to criminal court. Their trial begins Eastern District of New York, June 10, 2024. So they wanted this Slacken con to go away because the media was making Reed Slacken wear the word Scientologist around his neck like a toilet seat because he was a Scientologist. They wanted 5 new Citizens Committee on Human Rights out and run internationally. So they wanted commercials that attacked psychiatry. Double the airings of human right PSAs. Yeah, that's going to handle it. You're this vicious cult that imprisons people, especially children, robs them of their childhood. And yeah, let's put out some human rights PSAs. That would be like in Berlin in 1939 doing human rights PSAs. Belgium case evaluation done and implemented. They had a criminal case in Belgium. Spain appeal done. That Heber had been arrested. Heber Jansch and some other Scientologists. Heber was held. They were appealing. They paid like $1 million in bail, and Heber fled Spain, which is an interesting story. I'll tell another time. So anyway, my point is, there's plenty of evidence, but I'm helping you think through how Scientology is thinking. How can we make ourselves indispensable, make money, recruit? It's social betterment. You can live without Scientology for 1 billion years. Yes, you can, Uncle Hubert. You can. You can live without it for all of eternity. So now this is going to bring me to my third document. And I'm going to show you where the indispensability really happens and how it translates into fair game. So let's go to this document. This is a This was from the old St. Pete Times, and this was published when Scientology hit town. And this is a phenomenal PDF. This is a 20-page collection, and it covers the time when Scientology, when L. Ron Hubbard had the Apollo go ashore, and he sent the crew under the name of United Churches of Florida, or UC, they called it, United Church. But this is a phenomenal historical document. It's just worth its weight in gold, and it'll give you new Scientology watchers. It will educate you on how Scientology got into Clearwater, Florida, how they entered as United Churches of Florida and began to operate programs that included framing then Mayor Gabe Cazares, the late Gabe Cazares. They framed him for a hit and run, tried to get him arrested. And this is really, really a valuable historical document. And it's been that way ever since Scientology, went into Clearwater there in 75. But what I wanted to show you, and I'm just going over it, a lot of details that you may not know about. They were documenting back then Hubbard's Swiss bank accounts, in Luxembourg, all kinds of stuff. Taxes owed then on, those things like this, attacks on Scientology. So there's a program, and I may lay it out systematically, where Hubbard says attack the attackers. There's key documents. But where I'm taking you on this, okay, I'm going to make this larger. A little bit of reading, but it's educational. And this goes again into indispensability as fair game. The highlighted section basically, it's basically to influence opinion leaders. It's to get to the leaders of the town. And then, so it says the overall plan, and this is where my mouse is, the overall plan is to locate opinion leaders, then their enemies. So let's say an opinion leader is the mayor. You want to find out the mayor's enemies. And then you want to get the dirt, scandal, crime of the mayor's enemies, and then give this to the mayor. Now, this is how insane Scientology is. And basically, it's sort of like you befriend those people in power who you need, you find their enemies, and then help them destroy their enemies. This is like Scientology using fair game, but this is the insanity. This was a program approved by Hubbard. And see where it says example B1? Here's an actual Scientology document. And this was based on a document that was seized by the FBI in Operation Snow White. So example B1, this is how Scientology is going to gain influence, okay? Example B1, so that B1's an agent of Scientology, finds the Clearwater mayor as an opinion leader and Mr. Schultz as his enemy. So agent B1, let's just call her Betty. Betty finds the Clearwater mayor as an opinion leader and Mr. Schultz as his enemy. So Mayor Clearwater hates Mr. Schultz. So Scientology conducts an overt and suitable guise investigation of Schultz, and which shows him to like little girls, and that he walks into the park every Sunday when he attempts to drag little girls into the bushes. That is a what the fuck? So you're saying that find the so they're creating, this is how delusional and hallucinatory they are. Find out that the mayor's friend is a pedo by overt investigation. Okay, so you find this guy is trying to drag little girls into the bushes in the park. This is how they're thinking, how to make Scientology indispensable. This is why this is batshit crazy. And you're seeing it in actual documents. This is an actual document. Okay, so Betty, the Scientology agent, is supposed to find out that Mr. Schultz is a pedo who attempts to drag little girls into the bushes. Now, stop. At that point, when you find out that Mr. Schultz is a pedo attempting to kidnap and rape little girls, you call the police immediately. You don't let little girls be endangered. You call the police immediately. But Scientology does not call the police immediately because they're wanting to make themselves indispensable. So try to follow this tortured, fucked up cult logic, okay? Because this is how they think. This is the insanity, and this was a Hubbard approved program. Okay, so what you do is B1, after it says he attempts to drag little girls into the bushes, B1 or Betty turns this data over to the United Churches. You see, that's what Scientology was impersonating as United Churches. The United Churches goes to the mayor and gets his okay to look into what can be done to beautify Clearwater City Park. Shortly after the mayor gives his okay to look into the park, United Churches discovers, in quotes, that there are undesirables in the park and turns the data over to the mayor. Several days later, United Churches discovers, in quotes, that Mr. Schultz molests little girls in the park and turns that over to the mayor, managing to get press on the whole park campaign and to make a friend out of the mayor. Now, if Mr. Schultz is also a potential enemy of ours, meaning Scientology, which he might be after the above is done, and the mayor in the newspaper hasn't removed him from a position of power, then operations does. Okay, so this is what, okay, so according to L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology, you find out a pedo who wants to kidnap and rape little girls. And then you say, oh, let's look into beautifying the park because that's where the pedo operates. And then you find out the pedo is operating there. And then you turn that over to the mayor and make him look good by destroying his enemy, who's a pedo, and getting media for being so good and getting rid of all the deviants in the park. You can't make this up. This is just really fucking crazy. Good evening, Sassafras. Good evening. Yeah, and so this is how they're going to make themselves indispensable, not by stopping a pedo at the scene of the crime by calling the police, but by like waiting and doing this program to beautify the park and then giving the information to the church and then getting the guy arrested and making the mayor your friend that way because you found out that the mayor's enemy is actually a pedo and you let the mayor be involved in his arrest. Yeah, quietly and without sorrow. Yeah, United Churches was the entity that purchased the initial building in Clearwater with cash correctly. So, and I'm going to go back to this paragraph underneath. This is a great job that the St. Pete Times did. And the paragraph underneath, it says church functionaries were directed to fully investigate the Clearwater City and County area so we can distinguish our friends from our enemies and handle as needed. Dossiers were to be compiled on medical societies, clinics, hospitals, police departments, agencies, public relations firms, drug firms, federal, state, and local government agencies, city council, banks, investment houses, local representatives in Congress, and Florida's 2 U.S. senators. Finally, the directive called for protecting ourselves against any potential threat by taking control of the key points in the Clearwater area. This was to be accomplished by determining key news media and political leaders and gaining either their allegiance or control over them. So Scientology does create dossiers on, I imagine they have dossiers on every key person in LAPD they need to get close to. Same with any police department, but especially LAPD. And when you watch the conduct of the LAPD, we saw recently Defender Vance assaulted. The police took 45 minutes to show up, and then they investigated chalk on the sidewalk as a possible hate crime. So, yeah, this is where you start seeing the underlying documents. And what I've showed you is the underlying documents. We can also see how much there's plenty of pictures of LAPD at Scientology. So there's connections there, but that's to become inevitable, the church can use phony front groups, fair game, basically whatever it takes. It's all blackmail, bribery, and landscaping. That is a really that's really smart, Adam. That's actually very astute. In fact, it's good enough to steal. People may take your work because if you reduce Scientology down to a sentence, that would be one of the sentences on my short list. Scientology, colon. It's all blackmail, bribery, and landscaping. That's very insightful. Um, that's something to think about. It's pretty amazing. Now, blackmail we could nuance with influence buying, bribery. Uh, that is a really amazing quote, Adam. Um, so, um, so anyway, that's the indispensability of Scientology. It's built on front groups that surreptitiously recruit or recruit members, seek to recruit children, criminals, drug addicts, anyone, get their money from them to go through Narconon, Crimenon, or if they're not someone who's an illegal pre-clear in the church, get them to join the church. It's to save point themselves with police departments by giving them literature or school districts. So you see how the tentacles of Scientology are spread throughout the social betterment groups to try to make itself inevitable. And yet in doing so, Scientology to become inevitable must destroy SPs. So, and you were seeing that with the live streamers in cities, especially here in LA. There's police brutality. Been a false arrest, certainly more than one false arrest. And Scientology is doubling down. And we saw the use of a gang or former gang member. I'm not sure what Sanchez is, if he's out, if he blood out of the gang. I don't know. It's blood in, blood out of gangs. But you can see what it is. And so I just wanted to show you what Scientology's undisclosed secret purpose is, to make itself inevitable to everybody. And secondly, its undisclosed basis of using fair game, influence peddling, bribery when needed, and you would call it something else. PIs, fair game. So it accomplishes it. It tries to embed itself into society by using a lot of things. The interfaith movement is what I'm going to turn to next, because what it does to keep its First Amendment protection by getting in bed with other interfaith groups is very interesting. So I'm going to post this. Just go through some. Yeah, this is another thing Patrick brings up. The volunteer ministers. That's another group where they basically are ambulance chasers, the Scientology volunteer ministers. They'll show up at the scene of mass shootings, disasters, hurricanes, fires, floods, and they'll get PR photos, and they will distribute supplies that others donate, and then they'll leave the scene. So the volunteer ministers are another, PR. So you have PR. Something I want to show you. Let me see if I can find it in all this. It's kind of a roadmap of, oh yeah, I want to show it to you. I'm going to show you how Scientology thinks, because this is a document that Aaron shared, and I want to add it because it was really interesting. This is something that new Scientology activists, anti-Scientology activists, need to be aware of. From the OSA document, it's basically, Hubbard spelled it out. Scientology is going to use intelligence. Okay, that's private investigators doing either overt or covert investigations. An overt investigation is where they're investigating you. L. Ron Hubbard called that a noisy investigation. Look, let me tell you something as a private investigator. I can go up to someone's door and knock on it. I'm a private investigator. We're checking into this. I can do that. And that's a technique where if somebody, let's say someone stole something valuable, from their friend. Let's say they stole a Rolex watch collection, but they don't want it to become a police matter. And sometimes you don't if it's a family member. Let's say a family member stole something valuable from you. You don't want them to go to prison. Sometimes you just don't because they're a family member, but you want it back. You might get a PI to knock on a door and say, look, we don't want to make it a police matter. Just give back the watch collection. They give it back. The police don't have to get involved. You may never talk to that family member again. But what Scientology does, they do a noisy investigation to try to intimidate her or harass. I'm arguing they're not doing it for legitimate investigative reasons or to try to solve problems. They're doing it just to harass and intimidate. And I'm telling you, you shouldn't be intimidated or harassed by Scientology's PIs. They're not police. They have no powers. They're civilians. Take their photograph, put it online, but don't be intimidated because as a PI, I can tell you, we have no police powers. We're not the police. All we can do is investigate things. If it goes to a level of harassment, file a police report. But don't be afraid of these guys. Just don't. But so Scientology uses PIs as really is not in the proper role as a private investigator, but as enforcers, hooligans, thugs, intimidators. That's not real PI work. That's just being an enforcer or a hoodlum, taking money to be a hoodlum in an attempt to scare people. And that's a misuse. That's not real PI work. Real PI work is someone in your family's murdered, God forbid. The case goes cold. You might hire a retired homicide detective, and she has experience and she's a PI and she can investigate because the police won't. Sometimes when there's not enough police resources or a case goes cold, you will hire a retired police officer who he or she's a PI. So there's legitimate PIs, and then there's the hoodlums who will just intimidate. Okay, so I want to make that distinction. It's like doctors and many of whom have gone to prison for writing scripts for opiates. There's good doctors and there's bad doctors. Most doctors are good, but a lot of them will write scripts, and a lot of them have gone to prison for that. The pain mills that they were running down, and the pain pill mills that they were running in Florida were legion. I mean, the feds came on down that hard. Don't bring kids to protesters. Kids cannot consent to protest. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, you need to keep your kids away from that stuff, but going back to this document, intelligence, this is an OSA document. So when intelligence fails, it becomes a PR matter. So that is, if all the spying and intimidation and harassment and fair game fails, then they make it a PR matter. That's when they put up a Scientology hate page on you. They publish, they might dox you. They'll put up hate pages on you. That's a PR matter. So if they can't shutter you into silence through threats and intimidation, then they're going to try to engage in character assassination online. And this is what Hubbard said. And then when this character assassination, this PR fails, it becomes a legal matter, which means they'll sue. Now, they don't sue. Scientology does not sue because their kryptonite is countersuing, counterclaiming, and naming David Miscavige as a party. And the reason you can do that is David Miscavige is he owns all the licenses for the Church of Scientology. David Miscavige owns and controls. He effectively owns it. Let me rephrase it. David Miscavige controls, as chairman of the board RTC, all of the intellectual property of Scientology. He therefore, as RTC, issues a license to the Church of Scientology International, which has no members, and in turn sub-licenses all the churches and social betterment groups. So the way it works is this. When you sue the Church of Scientology International, you also sue RTC as the licensor and David Miscavige as the chairman of the board, because he licenses all this activity. He licenses it, so he's liable for his licensees. So that if the Church of Scientology or one of its agents does something you can sue them and name David Miscavige because he's licensed them and he's supposed to protect the church. So this is why the lawsuits, Scientology doesn't like to get involved in lawsuits. So when legal loses or declines, it becomes an LRH matter. Now we can say David Miscavige now that Ron's dead. And that's why you're seeing these documents that Mike Rinder turned over. They're talking about how David Miscavige has to handle everything himself because OSA is so incompetent. And so a couple takeaways for me. The documents that Mike leaked and Aaron showed, it really showed that OSA is dysfunctional. It's had to be disorganized several times. It really can't do its job in stopping, as it calls, suppression, which is just free speech. Hubbard would like to stop free speech. That's at the core of Scientology, is to destroy the freedom of speech of others to speak out against Scientology. When a Scientologist says, "Why are you attacking my religion?" you should say, "No, I'm engaging in free speech. I think your religion does horrible things. And here's the documents, and here's the proof, and here's the evidence, and here's why. Here's videos." And you say, "So I'm not attacking your religion. I'm engaging in free speech." You're free to respond. You're free. Hell, you're free to come on my YouTube channel if you want. Invite them on your YouTube channel. Have a debate. They won't do it. They won't do it. So, yeah, this is, we'll end on this because we're getting near an hour and a half. Yeah, they pull a lot up here. Yeah, they want to embed. This is why they use the San Fernando Valley org a lot for interfaith events. It's almost, they don't really come in LA so much to do it. They go over to the Valley and you'll see a lot of interfaith stuff going on at this, the San Fernando Valley Ideal org, the Valley org. Yeah, they want photographs. It's just like getting pictures with cops, smiling cops holding their anti-drug literature. They want to get pictures with clerics of other religions holding pictures to show we're all one. And they're a lot more organized there. And yeah, ecumenical misdirection, sure. And again, like I've said, all the crooks hang together, they hang apart. All religions, even though they may not agree doctrinally, as I've said, when it comes to protecting their tax exemptions, they're all on the same page. So I brought out the example of a Baptist church. I think it's fair to say that a Baptist would consider Scientology to be a demonic cult. And Pentecostals certainly would consider Scientology to be demonic and maybe a gateway into demonic possession. But when it came to protecting their tax exemption, they're reading from the same Bible called Cover Your Ass, the book of Cover Your Ass, book 1. We better all, like, even though I think your religion's demonic and you think mine's an R6 implant religion, and we disagree doctrinally, when it comes to our tax exemption and covering up child abuse, SA, keeping our tax exemption, not having to pay taxes, yeah, we're reading from the same Bible called Cover Your Ass. And so that's in a nutshell. Scientology wants to be inevitable, and yet you could live your entire existence. In fact, if you think of it, somehow, incredibly, Scientology, the entire world, the human race, did just fine. It had its war. I mean, that's the human condition: wars, disasters, invention, different ages. The world went its way without Scientology until 1950. And if Scientology, if Hubbard had driven off a cliff when he was up there with Jack Parsons up in the mountains, if L. Ron Hubbard had driven off a cliff in 1949, the world would be better off, as far as I'm concerned. It'd be a lot better off. I don't think very many people would disagree with me. Yeah, I often thought, what if Hubbard was up in the San Gabriel Mountains one night, and he just drove off a cliff and it never happened. Sometimes I find myself thinking about that. There would still be cults, but there wouldn't be the Scientology cult. So anyway, that's it. I'll be posting the documents. Any comments before we go? I didn't. Wayne, thank you for posting this. In 1973, as a young high school teacher in Sacramento, CA, Our schools allowed Scientology front group Narconon members who were ex-cons to recruit students. Wow. The cons later reoffended. That's scary. That's really scary. Yeah. So this is why be grassroots. You know, my kids were growing up. I was very involved in the school, in their schooling, and very involved as a parent. And I think it's important, the grassroots level, talk to the principal of your school about it if you see it, librarian at the local library, wherever you that's my blog. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, get involved at the grassroots level. You can get involved at the level of city council. You can get time to speak, and so many of you out there are as part of the SPTV community, and it's a really great thing because grassroots activism. Look, not everyone can go to protests, nor is it in everyone's best interest to go to a protest. You may have a type of job where it might not be smart, or you might be raising young ones and it's not smart, but you certainly can go to city council meetings. You can certainly talk to your local police department. You can get involved, definitely get involved with the school your kids are at. And so there's so many things you can do. So it's just a matter of what you want to do, even if it's writing letters to Congress. I'm putting a form letter up. I'm remiss. I was supposed to have it up last week, but even writing form letters through Congress, that's something that works because letters do get attention. And if L. Ron Hubbard had passed away, we'd be here tonight talking about the Moonies. Probably, yes. Or, whatever. I worked at YMCA. Really, Scientology is trying to get into the YMCA. Yeah, that's good that you threw them away. 49ers fan for life. So you can see where Scientology, one thing they do here in Hollywood is they will go where there's audition calls. And Scientology Celebrity Center Sea Org members will go there to try to recruit young people who want to make a career in Hollywood. They'll recruit right in audition lines. So Scientology looks anywhere and everywhere to try to recruit. So look at this is an interesting statistic. The YMCA, YWCA, there's the Boys and Girls Center. So you have to be vigilant about cults in general, but Scientology in particular. Yes, and that's well said. Whatever you feel like your contribution or participation is, because some people are so good. I'll give you one example in closing. When Leah Remini's double Emmy winning show Scientology, The Aftermath was running. When Leah's show was running, Mike Rinder's daughter Taryn Tosh was trying to dead agent the show, as they call it, by claiming that Mike had assaulted his mother, her mother, his ex-wife, which didn't happen. And I documented that on my blog, and I showed the police report. There was just incidental contact. Kathy refused transport. Nothing happened. Okay, but Taryn actually she, as a Sea Org member, tried to insert herself into the Me Too movement. She went to an event here in LA where Gretchen Carlson, former news anchor who really started the Me Too movement with her lawsuit, very courageous for doing it, but she started the Me Too movement. Gretchen was speaking at a women's event here in LA. Taryn brought in a photographer with her and got a picture with Gretchen Carlson, published it on her Twitter account, now X, and tried to insinuate that Gretchen Carlson was standing behind Taryn and her efforts, and as opposed to Mike Rinder. Now, I publicized this on my blog. One of my readers, and this is why you put stuff out, because you have an invisible audience. You never know who you're going to reach. You never know who's listening to you. Someone who read that actually knew Gretchen Carlson. One of my readers knew Gretchen Carlson. And she called Gretchen and said, "Hey, Scientology is using you." And Gretchen Carlson did not like that. And that tweet was gone like that. So you never know who knows anyone. You never know who's reading, watching, listening, and will pick up on what you say. That's why there's power in numbers. That's why I'm glad the SPTV community is exponentiating and doing so many original things. even if you're not on camera, but you're doing things in your community at the grassroots level. I think it all begins in the streets at the grassroots level, and it builds power. And that's how movements work. So anyway, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. And I guess if David Miscavige were here, and he's not, he's probably out having, probably out having a drink. He might warn you. He might warn you about the dangers of, what is it? Marcabs. If David Miscavige were here, he might warn you of the danger of Marcabs. But since they don't exist, you wouldn't have to worry. So for the Scientology Money Project on YouTube, your host, Jeffrey Augustine, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Okay, say bye, Dave.